Hey, Mackenzie, how's it going? Another episode. I'm excited about this one. We're going to do a little self-doubt, episode on self-doubt. But before we do that, you just got back from a big vacation. Tell us all about it.
I did. It was much needed. I went back to Costa Rica like I talked about last week, but just did lots of exploring, lots of beaching, surfing. It was cool. I was actually able to meet up with one of my friends that I knew when I lived there, so it was cool that he was still there. And yeah, I was just able to take some much needed time away from basically everything from training, from work, which was, I will say, very challenging. I had to force myself to take it completely off. There was days where I was challenged. I'm like, oh, I should get into some work, or I was like thinking about work stuff, but I was able to force myself out of it and just like completely unplug. And it was much needed to just kind of fill my cup and make sure that I'm coming back recharged and ready to pour into everyone else.
Was that hard to do to kind of just push everything aside and forget about the real world? Or once you're down there, like, I'm just exploring and appreciating Costa Rica as much as possible?
A little bit of both. Like there was definitely days where I woke up with that anxiety and so I had to like snap myself out of it. But once I was able to like kind of reframe my mindset, it was a little bit easier to get out of it. But yeah, that was the first time in 3 years that I took actual time off from work. So it was definitely a challenge, definitely different than what I was used to, but totally worth it.
Yeah, and I don't know. Maybe it's just me, and I think you probably feel the same way. But the beach to me is like the beach atmosphere is just the best place to do that, right? Just to get away. It's so peaceful, so amazing. Sunrises, sunsets.
Yeah, beach is my absolute favorite go-to. And people are always like argue like the beach or mountain. For me, it's beach all the way. I mean, I love both, but I'm definitely a beach person too.
Yeah, I'm by far a beach person. I was kind of remind me, seeing some of your pictures and your videos, kind of reminded me of a trip. Actually, my wife had earned it. She's a superstar salesperson, and she earned a trip to Punta Mita, Mexico, which I'd never heard of before. It was this tiny town outside of Puerto Vallarta, and it was all inclusive, four seasons resort, and it was just gorgeous. And just the whole week, you're just kind of like away from the real world, and everything is just so peaceful. It's really easy to get away and just you know relax and deload. And I think everyone, whether it's a beautiful amazing trip to a beach or whether you're going to the cabin in the woods, whatever it may be, I think it's great that everyone takes that time to kind of just get away for a little bit.
Yeah, 100%. Those all-inclusive resorts are always really nice.
Oh man, phenomenal, so much fun.
But yeah, I think even if it's not on a big scale like a vacation too, just setting aside some just a weekend or a few hours out of a day to like go and set some time to fill your cup. I know that's something I've been more intentional with like on a week to week basis, and obviously this vacation was a more larger scale version of that, but it is so important to make sure that you're filling your cup first because you can't pour from an empty cup as we all know.
Yeah, I think that's a great point too. It doesn't have to be like, I think in our minds we think about vacation has to be this amazing five-star resort or this, week or 2 week long trip type of thing. And really, like you said, it could just be simply scheduling a couple hours out of your weekend just to do like whatever you want, or just to do something that's just going to be totally relaxing and re-energizing for yourself.
Yeah, sometimes that's all it takes, just a few hours or a day, and just you're back on track, you're dialed in, you're recharged and ready to go dominate.
Yeah, there you go.
Well, cool. Today we want to talk about self-doubt. This is a topic I'm very passionate about. I know you are as well. And I think no matter where you are in life or what you're working towards, we all experience this on some level. We all experience some level of self-doubt or negative thoughts. And part of it is that those things are never going to go away. But also, part of it is stuff that we can change and we can become aware of and shift to create a narrative that's actually going to serve us, whether that's in fitness, health, work, relationships, whatever it may be. I always say the biggest thing limiting us is our mind, period, end of story. And I wholeheartedly believe this. I think that we can achieve anything that we want if we learn to shift in the right mentality and not listen to the false narratives that our mind is constantly feeding us. Our mind is really the only thing holding us back from achieving literally anything, whatever the hell you want. Like, our mind is the only limiting factor. I will stand by that. And I find this true in every area of my life, whether like whenever I'm struggling, it's because my thoughts and the story I'm telling myself. And once I'm able to check myself and move through it and find the actual truth in it, so many doors begin to open. So I'm curious, do you have any negative beliefs or limiting beliefs or doubts that come up for you that you've noticed?
I was thinking about that, and I think I had to do a little of deep thoughts on that because I think initially, if you just asked me that question, I'd be like, not really. But when I actually dove into that and reflected on it, I realized I do. And I was a big baseball guy growing up. And so in growing up, I was just surrounded by this super competitive culture. And winning was everything. It was expected. Basically, it was the only option. And so while a part of me loved this because it created this mindset in me that I'm just a fierce competitive person. It created this fierce competitive drive, taught me extreme discipline, which obviously helps me, especially in my health and fitness journey. But it also kind of created this really, I guess, complicated relationship with failure. And that's what I kind of started thinking about when we started talking about self doubt. So the downside really of this mindset was that I kind of equated losing with being a failure. If we didn't win, then it was a complete failure, no matter what happened. And, not winning was unacceptable. And I carried that even probably now to my life. And the idea that failure meant that I wasn't good enough often would linger in my mind for a long time, too. And it kind of reminded me, I was thinking about this the other day, the movie Talladega Nights. And he's being interviewed after he wins, the Will Ferrell's character, and he goes, "If you're not first, you're last." And I know it's supposed to be silly and a joke, but it definitely hit home to me because I've always had that mentality. Losing felt like something just that I could not handle. And I mean, there's often times where I, was handled it super poorly, and I'd get really upset about it, and it was almost like I'd taken that first or last idea way too seriously. And so when I lost, it wasn't just about not winning. When I was younger, that's all I thought. But as I reflect on it, I felt like almost like if I lost and I failed as a person. And that's kind of how I imagined people would see me, that they didn't see me as a winner. So then they'd see me as a failure or a loser, type of thing. So it definitely led to self-doubt over the years. I guess sometimes the fear of failing would prevent me from working through struggles. And the problem wasn't necessarily starting things. I don't think I ever did not start something because I thought I might fail, but I found myself giving up too soon. Once things got tough, or probably a better way to put it is if it didn't go as I expected it, meaning that I wasn't like crushing it or having huge success right away, then I would lose patience or start second guessing myself and wondering if it would, if I should even bother to keep going. And then that, of course, you have that inner voice kicking. You're like, oh, hey, what if you fail? And probably more importantly in my mind is, what will people think of you? And so it wasn't necessarily about just the losing. It was about also the embarrassment the self-embarrassment that I created in my mind. So the fear of looking foolish or even vulnerable in front of other people has held me back from taking a risk or trying things that really felt like out of my comfort zone. And it's definitely a major work in progress. I have still, whatever it may be, I still have that issue. But I'm trying to reflect more. I'm trying to learn that failure doesn't, necessarily mean the end of the world. It's not a direct reflection of who I am. It's really part of the process. And so once I started thinking about failure that way, it's helped me shift my perspective. So I've learned to see it more as a stepping stone and not something to be afraid of, but something more to embrace. And that's basically how we're going to learn. That's how we're going to grow. And ultimately, that's how we're going to get better. So now, and I say, instead of stressing, there's still a lot of stress. But so I guess what I try to tell myself, instead of stressing over that failure, I try to remind myself that it's part of that journey to success.
Yeah, I love that. And I think a lot of times it's the meaning that we tie to these events or like these failures. Because, like you said, you can either frame it, you can create the meaning that, oh, I'm a failure, everyone's judging me, or whatever it is. Or, hey, this is an opportunity to grow. This is a learning experience. But it's all about that meaning that you're tying to these thoughts that you have or the event that is occurring.
Yeah, it's that growth mindset, and I think sometimes I'll think, oh yeah, I have the growth mindset, but I want to take out the failure part of the growth mindset. Knowing that there will be failure in there. It's not the trajectory is never straight up. And I think about like our goals and our health and fitness journey. we've mentioned this before. It's never a straight up trajectory in terms of we hit our goals and we're just going up, up, up to do what we want to do. It's that roller coaster. And sometimes we have some great highs and sometimes there's some lows. But the key is as long as we're going in that right direction, then we'll eventually get to success. A really good book that I read that talks about mindset and helps you to create that growth mindset, or it encourages, I should say, readers to view challenges and setbacks more as opportunities than failures. It's called Mindset: The New Psychology of Success by Carol Dweck. So highly recommend that if you guys have not read that. But I read that. I thought it was really, really, really good. And it really helped me to look at those, failures or challenge. I like to say challenges probably better. So as just part of those stepping stones to get to where I want to be.
Yeah, I always say failure is a prerequisite to success. You cannot be successful if you don't go and fail. The more you fail, I'd argue the faster you will be successful.
Yeah. Yeah.
And for me, the biggest narrative that's been ingrained in me since I was a kid was the concept of I'll never be good enough. This is something my parents reinforced when I was very young, and it's just become the baseline. And it controlled my life for so long, and it held me back in school, relationships, work, personal pursuits, literally everything. I always say the story you tell yourself becomes your reality. So it's no wonder that I fell short in every area of my life because I believed I was never good enough, and I reinforced it every single day. And the funny thing about your mind is it looks for the things that are going to reinforce your beliefs. So whenever I would slip up, whenever something would go wrong or I get rejected, whatever it was, my mind would be like, oh, yep, there it is again. You're not good enough, and just continue to reinforce it. And it becomes a very slippery slope if you aren't aware of this and can't shift and change those narratives. It took me a while to become aware of this in the first place. I went through a really big shift years back after I got off all my medications, and that was ultimately what allowed me to start working on these other areas of my health and wellness because at that point, I couldn't do anything when I was just in that negative mental state. So once I was able to kind of clear the air and like get to the other side of it, specifically the mental side, I was able to get really in tune with myself and dive deep into the inner work. I think step one is always having that awareness. We can get into a couple things that help build that awareness, but then from there, you need to be able to catch it, rewrite it, and constantly do that as these things pop up. And over time, you'll get faster and better at catching that kind of stuff. And that way, these things won't come up as much. And that's not to say that they're never going to come up again. Like anything in mental health, you're always going to go through these struggles. And those types of narratives are always there for me. And I'm catching them a lot on all kinds of random things I wouldn't expect day to day. It's going to pop up. Like, that's the bottom line. You're always going to go through those struggles or those negative thoughts or those beliefs. But the key is just another tool. You're able to catch it immediately, rewrite it, and move forward in a way that's going to be more beneficial for you. So it's just building the tools and awareness to catch it when it comes up and make sure that it doesn't like take the effect that it normally does and consume and affect all of your actions and how you're showing up day to day like it normally would.
Yeah, I mean, I can totally relate to that, what you're saying as well. For me, it wasn't necessarily like the belief that I wasn't good enough. But like I said, that pressure that if I didn't win or succeed, then I felt like I was a failure. So growing up in that sports culture, like I said, winning was everything. It was just ingrained in me that anything less than first place was just unacceptable. It's interesting. In sports, I always had, and I still do, always had this really strong confidence that we were going to win. And there was this expectation that success was inevitable, that we were going to come out on top. And I think that mindset was really a big reason why I had so much success in athletics, whether it was like flag football or softball or baseball, whatever it may be. Looking back at it, I always surrounded myself with athletes that shared that same mindset. The belief that, hey, we're going to win no matter what. And that was the idea going into every situation. And I think that sense of that sense of shared confidence and determination and will was definitely a huge factor in the success of the teams that I played on. And having a team that was all on that same page, pushing each other, holding each other accountable for that, created that environment where winning felt like that was the only option and that's what we were going to do. And I think that energy and that focus, I think it played like a huge role in how we achieved what we did. But then what's interesting was in other areas of my life, that same level of confidence didn't like always carry over. And I think that's where all my struggles were. So like whether that self doubt would creep in, whether it was like in relationships or my career path, or even just pursuing, personal goals of my own. But as I began learning, and the more I surrounded myself with like-minded people who share that same drive, that same mindset, and the easier it became to kind of shut down those doubts, or maybe shut down is not the best word, but kind of push them off a little bit and move forward with confidence in other areas of my life. I don't know. So in sports, I guess the outcome was pretty clear. I work hard, stay disciplined, do what I was supposed to do every day, and success would follow. But in real life, as we know, things aren't necessarily as predictable. And that's where I started realizing just how deep kind of the failure was. And it wasn't just about winning in the same way, but the fear of not measuring up. And kind of like you had mentioned, once I started to catch those doubts and understand that I was putting those doubts in my head, become more aware of them, it was a lot easier to recognize when self-doubt was actually taking over. And I think that was one of the biggest shifts for me, was realizing that success doesn't always look the same in every area of my life. And so in general, I try to go about the kind of the mindset that it's all about progress and not perfection, and that's something that, we stress to our clients as well, so anytime we have those moments of discomfort or those times when doubt does show up, it's just another opportunity to challenge our old beliefs and rewrite that story. Or you'll hear a lot, rewrite, change that narrative, right? Once those beliefs become ingrained in us, it's almost like your mind is always looking for ways to reinforce them. It's kind of like what you were saying. So if I didn't get that result I wanted, or if I failed in some way, then I'd immediately think, oh, I didn't win, therefore I've failed, right? And it was a cycle that keeps me stuck in some ways and keeps me from trying new things sometimes, because I just don't want to face that fear. And it's exactly like you said, the first step is awareness, and once I became aware of that, and still in becoming aware of those things, then I start to notice when I'm being too hard on myself. A lot of times it's like, hey, is this realistic? It's about not never feeling that fear, because I think that self-doubt is probably always going to be there. But being able to catch it faster, realize that that's just kind of a story I'm telling myself, and it's not actual reality. So I think that's part of that mental health journey, learning to rewrite those stories in a way that serves us better. So it's a skill, it's a practice, right? So every time that I catch myself, I try to think of, failure isn't something to fear, but more so it's a tool for growth. And then over time, it does get easier to shift those thoughts and move forward in a way that's much more productive and healthier in my life. So what you said about constantly rewriting the story, I think is key. It's not about making those negative thoughts necessarily go away. So I think they're always going to be there, but it's about getting better at responding to them in a way that's going to, I guess, empower you rather than keep you stuck where you are. And it's a process that definitely takes time. Like I feel like I'm not even close to where I need to be or should be or want to be. But it's definitely worth taking that time to find that awareness and to use those tools to kind of keep moving forward.
Isn't that the story of life though? It really is a never ending journey. You never get to a point where you're like, yeah, I'm good. We made it. I'm perfect. Like there's always that other level, and you're always gathering new knowledge and awareness on things that you can do to improve in those areas.
Yeah, it's really true.
I also think it's funny when I made that big shift years back, when I made that transformation and really got dialed in this sort of mindset stuff, I thought I had gotten to the other side. I thought I was almost done with these thoughts. Like I never thought I was, yeah, I'm good. I'll be good now. But I really thought I had gotten to the other side. And now it's funny when that self doubt still comes up. I'm hyper aware of it immediately. I know where it's coming from. I'm like, oh, that's interesting. That belief is still there. Like, what the hell is it doing there? And so I immediately go to rewrite it. And so that's the cool thing is it doesn't go away, but you're just hyper aware of it. And it's so easy to go and switch it because you know the actual reality of it. And you know it's just bullshit and it's your mind making up stuff. And for me, it's just comes up on random things too, especially in business. That was one I did not expect for it to come up on. So it's just interesting seeing that and just being aware and kind of tying where these things are coming from. But once you're aware of it, it makes it so much easier to be able to shift that. And that's what we're going for. We're building the tools in your tool belt to combat this stuff and call yourself out on what the actual truth is. Because again, your mind is making up shit to hold you back and keep you in your bubble of what's comfortable. And we don't want that. We want to be able to expand, push ourselves to new limits. And part of that is going to be uncomfortable. It's going to be addressing these types of thoughts and the beliefs that you have about yourself and going in and rewriting them and doing that tough inner work.
Yeah, and I totally relate to what you're saying about it. Them keep coming up because you start to think I'm done with these old stories. I've moved past that, and but then, like you said, they still pop up, right? They still come up, and sometimes, like you said, in the most unexpected places. Sometimes you think that you're in the most confident area of your life, and then all of a sudden that self doubt, and you're like, "Whoa, I did not see that coming."
Yep.
So, and even when I started making that progress and getting more disciplined in my health and fitness journey or in my career, like I said, they just didn't disappear. They still show up. And like you said, awareness is so important, knowing that it's not going to be easier, but at least you understand how you can kind of shift that narrative. So the key is having those tools in that tool belt to rewrite and remind yourself what the truth actually is. I find it super interesting on the psychological side, how these stories can be so persistent. Again, for me, it was always about not wanting to lose, fearing that failure, especially when I stepped out of my comfort zone. And I had to learn that failure wasn't the end, but it's just a lesson. And it's uncomfortable sometimes to face those beliefs. It's easier to kind of push them aside, right? But it's really that discomfort where the real transformation happens. And so what's cool though is the more you practice it, I feel like the more you practice catching those thoughts, the faster that shift comes. And it's really like building muscle. So like those old narratives don't have to control you anymore. And over time, you start to recognize it for what they really are. They're just old, outdated stories that don't serve you anymore. And the cool thing is we get to choose whether we want to rewrite them or not. It's a process. I think we're always going to face those moments. But I think the key takeaway, at least what I've learned over the years, is that, I want to lean on that growth mindset, know that we're always evolving, we're always learning, we're always growing, we're always pushing to get better. And, sometimes it's those uncomfortable or challenging moments that we use to break through to new levels. And it's that willingness to face those fears head on. And that's what helps expand us. So, I want to tie this specifically though into your fitness journey and talk about 5 ways that we can overcome self-doubt.
Yeah, definitely. I think step one is getting clear on your goal and your why. That's the baseline for anything. Before anything else, we want to get clear on, what is the vision? How can you know the steps you need to take or achieve what you want to achieve if you don't even know what you're actually working towards? I think that's where a lot of people get stuck is they feel like they're spinning their wheels, but they don't have a clear vision. So of course you're going to feel stuck. So best process to do this is simple. Sit down, reflect. You gotta dive deep though. What is your goal? Do you want to lose weight? Do you want to build muscle? Get specific with the numbers. How much weight? How many inches off your waist? What do you want to look like? What do you want to feel like? What do you want to feel like when you look at yourself in the mirror? How do you want to feel going about your work day to day, playing with your kids day to day? Like, what does that look like? Get crystal clear on the picture. And I recommend journaling this out, setting very clear numbers, time frames, whatever that looks like, with not only how you envision it feeling, but also how you're looking, and then the actual numbers on like how much weight, how much you're losing, the inches, what amount of time frame, all that stuff. Like get as specific as possible with this. That's step one. And then you also need to dive deeper into the why. Why is it important that you lose that weight or look a certain way? Why is it important that you are able to move freely, play with your kids? Why is it important that you show up as that best version of yourself for your work? Whatever the goal is, why? On a fucking deep level, why does that matter to you? How is that going to impact your life? If you can't get clear on that, nothing else really matters.
Yeah, and one of the things that I teach my kids when we're reading a story, especially if it's a lot of text and there's not a whole lot of pictures, is I tell them, I want you, as we're reading a story, especially if I'm reading it out loud to them, I want you to create that picture in your head of what's going on. Create that picture, or even better, create your own like little movie of that scene. Create your own little scene. And I think when you're creating your why, if you just kind of think about it and not really do anything else about it, it's really hard to really connect that to the plan and everything that you need to do moving forward. But if you can actually create a picture or better, like I said, a scene, like a movie scene of you actually achieving these goals. What do you look like? What does your family look like? What does your career look like? Like, how is all this affecting your future life? And you visually see that in your head. I think that's, and then you write it down as well, and you have those goals written down. I think that's a powerful image to keep you going and figure, okay, this is why I'm doing this, as opposed to just saying, oh, I need to lose some weight, or I could probably get a little stronger, or something like that. It's being very specific and making it very personal, to get there.
Yeah, so powerful. Like sitting in those feelings and those emotions. I always like taking people through that exercise of truly envision yourself like having that dream outcome that you want, sitting there visualizing what that feels like, how that like feels mentally, physically, emotionally, what you're seeing in the mirror, how you're doing stuff day to day, and just sitting in those feelings and like it's powerful. It should bring up some emotions for you. That's when you know you're on the right track and you have like a really solid vision and a solid why.
Yeah, and I mean, there's tons of research out there that proves that mental visualization is so powerful, so
Yeah, I
powerful.
love doing that just for any of my goals. It's just like sitting and actually visualizing myself having achieved it and what that feels like.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Okay,
that's step
so
number one.
that's step number one. Step number two is set small, achievable goals. So one of the best ways to build self-confidence and belief is to follow through on promises you make to yourself, right? And the best way to do this, and the same way to see consistency and sustainable results, is small actionable steps. So instead of focusing on the end result, where we eventually want to be, break your fitness goals into small, manageable steps. So celebrate, I think this is a huge thing too, celebrating those small wins along the way. And that's going to help build confidence, maintain that motivation. And this is the only way we work with our clients. We're never going to go from 0 to 100 and expect the same from you. So, because we know that it's not what's going to last, right? And so, you need to start meeting yourself where you're at and then overcome those doubts and uncertainty one step at a time. And so, this is why with our clients, we set weekly goals, with our check-ins, and we want to make sure that everything we set is manageable and actionable. So, for example, if we're talking about losing weight, losing 2 pounds a week is not really the goal. The goal is to hit our protein, get our workouts in, hit our macros, and eventually that weight loss, will come about. I always like to talk about those small achievable goals, but I always like to celebrate those small wins too. I think celebrating those is super underrated. So, and then hitting the smaller milestones like losing a few pounds before aiming for that huge 30-pound weight loss type of thing is just going to boost your confidence. And I think it makes the process way more enjoyable. You're constantly seeing victories along the way. You shift your focus from outcomes to actions. So going back to kind of a good example, instead of obsessing, like let's say I have to lose 30 pounds in 30 days or something like that, we just start committing to a week without eating out, or maybe we add our daily walks, and then eventually that creates sustainable habits, that are easy to maintain long term, while also helping you appreciate and enjoy that journey more. And again, we're always looking for changes that can be sustainable. We're not looking for quick fixes here.
Yeah, I do this in my own journey too when I'm adding in new habits. Like, for example, when I was optimizing my sleep routine, step one was just setting a wind down alarm. And once I got good at sticking to that, I'd leave my phone in a different room, so like locked away. And then once I got good with that, I'd add in a journal, a stretch, a wind down routine, stuff like that. Or even when I moved here to Florida, I applied this concept. Like I said, I'm very introverted. I knew nobody. I was terrified to get out. So I'd start by just getting out for a walk once a week and sitting out at a coffee shop once a week or going to a new place. And then I'd up it to 2 to 3 times a week or trying another new place or having one conversation when I was out and just like slowly building on the small habits over time. And that's what allows you to build that belief in yourself and not get burnt out in the process and making sure that it sticks in the long run.
Yeah, and I'll give you another good example too. Let's say someone's trying to increase their daily steps, because that's something that's been popular lately, right? You have the number 10,000 steps out there, and that's great to reach 10,000 steps. But first, we need to figure out what your daily average is, and we want to set that achievable target so it's easy to hit. So if we're consistently only hitting 3,000 steps, 10,000 is not very manageable. It's not very realistic, right? So instead, we might set the goal for 5,000 steps a day. And then once we establish that we can hit that consistently, then we increase it to like 6,000. And that's totally fine that we're not getting 10,000 yet, but we're consistently getting better. And we need to celebrate that every time we get up to that. And not necessarily a certain time frame either. Maybe 1 week, maybe, multiple weeks. But the idea is just to make small gradual increases each week and make sure that the goal is within reach that we can get to. And it really does. We've talked about consistency a lot, but if you're consistently making small improvements, they really do add up over time.
Yeah, we got to start small. And again, I cannot stress enough the importance of following through on the promises you make to yourself. That is one of my core values, something that I instill in clients and something that I follow through on in myself every single day, because it really does build that self-belief, that self-confidence like nothing else. And nothing else will also deteriorate your self-belief and self-confidence as committing to things, even just mentally inside your head and saying like, hey, I'm going to get up at 6 a.m. and go to the gym, or I'm going to make this meal, or whatever it is. Even the small stuff, every single time that you commit to something or you say you're going to do something, even in your head, and you don't do it, is just degrading your self-belief and self-confidence. So that is one of the things that I will die on that hill. It's one of the best things you can do for yourself. And the best way to start is by starting super small. So that way you can continue to stack those wins, and it's super easy to follow through and build that belief in yourself, because every time that you make a small commitment and you follow through, you're adding it to the tool belt. You're stacking those wins, and it really does compound over time.
Yeah, it really does. It really does. It sets you up for success. All right, so step number 3 is tracking your progress in meaningful ways. So I think some people a lot of times will get caught up in assessing like a number on the scale, right? So they fail to see that progress they're making in a lot of in other ways. So it's just one way to think about, but weight in particular is just one small unit of measurement, and we need to focus on other things like, are you feeling more energized? Are you more productive at work? Are you more focused? Is your skin looking better? Do you just feel better in general? Are you able to spend more time playing with your kids? Do you have more energy doing that? Do you have more endurance? Are you getting stronger at the gym? That's a huge one. Sometimes if you're getting stronger at the gym, you're building muscle, that weight on the scale may not change much. Are your clothes fit? That's one thing that is super important. Are your clothes fitting better? How do you see yourself in the mirror? How are other people commenting on how you look? So I think those things are different measurements that we can use to grade your progress, focusing on things that you're doing right. That kind of goes along with the small wins. Really helps in boosting your confidence and boosting your belief and preventing self-doubt, but boosting that belief in your progress as well.
Yeah, I think we're so often very hard on ourselves, and we're blind to the progress that we make. I think that's part of the value in having a coach. And what we do with clients is like highlighting all the things that they are doing amazing, because sometimes it is hard to see that, especially when you're looking at yourself day to day and you just aren't seeing like those significant changes. It's hard to notice those 1% improvements, but having that data can really prove that you are. And shifting your focus from perceived weaknesses or failures to your strengths can really help in reducing that self-doubt.
Yeah, we're probably the biggest critics of our own selves, right? We're hardest on ourselves. So like you said, it's as a coach, I love pointing out all the wins and successes, because you're right. A lot of times people overlook that, or they don't view it as a win until they see that final goal type of thing. So shifting that focus is huge.
Yeah, it's always easy to see the things that you're doing wrong or the things that aren't going as right, as opposed to all the things that you are doing right and that are changing for you. Mm-hmm. So, step number 4 is surrounding yourself with the right people. You need the right people in your corner. We've all heard the phrase, you're the sum of the 5 people you spend the most time with. It's simple, like it's a cliche, but it's true. It's there for a reason. We do really need to be careful about who we're selecting to be in our circle. Whether it's 5 people or however many, you want people that are lifting you up, inspiring you, pushing you to be better, and also challenging you and, calling you out and making sure that you are pushing and becoming the best version of yourself. The goal is to surround yourself with people who aren't just accepting you as you are or keeping you in what's comfortable, but push you to grow and be better. And I think a lot of us, I think every single person probably experiences pushback when we start making significant changes, especially in health and fitness. People around you notice, and sometimes that can bring up insecurities for them. They see what you're doing, and it exposes what they're not doing. And so whether it's consciously or subconsciously, they feel insecure. And they may not be trying to bring you down to their level intentionally, but like they are. They want to bring you down to your level so they feel better about themselves. Again, it's not necessarily intentional, but this is a common theme that I see. And it's exactly why having people who truly support you is so important. You need people who want to see you winning, who lift you up, who want to build that self belief and push you to be better. And sometimes if you tell your dreams to the wrong people, they will crush them. And it's not on purpose. Again, like it's not like people have this malicious, like bad intent, but it's easy if people don't share those same beliefs, it's easy to fall back into those false narratives when getting that negative feedback from people or people kind of shooting down your goals and your dreams and your vision.
Yeah, and having that accountability and especially having that positive growth mindset accountability, I think is so big. So, someone might be out there thinking, okay, well, how do I find this kind of support? So we always say, first of all, look for a positive community. That might mean finding a fitness class or a group of friends at the gym or a specific workout buddy that works really well with you. And then if you're looking for accountability and encouragement, working with a coach is obviously a huge source of support. I mean, that's what we're doing all the time. We're constantly trying to help them to get to where they want to be, and we're in their corner 24/7 type of thing. And that's I think. I mean, you can be so dialed in every aspect, but sometimes if you don't have that support of people around you or find that support, then it's an uphill climb. I think it's a huge battle. And if you don't have that level of support now, I think that's pretty common actually. We've created a community online, and we also think about where these types of people are likely to be in your life. If you're hanging out at places where hanging out at bars or, partying every weekend, it might be a little bit harder to find that fitness oriented, supportive people. So you have to kind of think about, where can you go to meet people that are going to align with your vision and that are going to align with the ultimate goal that you have in improving yourself. Go to the events like, hit the gym, obviously, go to places where you're going to have that growth mindset. Just anywhere where you think that people are going to be in your corner and are going to want to lift you up towards your goals.
Yeah, I always think about what is the ideal type of person that I want to surround myself with that is at that level that I want to be at, and where the hell do they hang out? Because that's where you need to go and you need to find them. You need to put yourself in those situations where you're surrounded by people at a higher level that will be able to bring you back up to their level. And number 5 is practice positive self talk. You are the story you tell yourself. This is a common quote that I always say, and I believe wholeheartedly. We need to learn to embrace failure and lean into fear and discomfort. And if it was easy, everyone would be doing it. Understand that everyone was lost at some point, and developing self awareness to get to the root of what's holding you back is going to be key. So, like I said earlier, step 1 is rewriting your self talk. Step 1 to rewriting your self talk is going to be awareness. If you aren't aware that you're having these narratives or these negative self beliefs, you won't be able to change them, and you're just going to be stuck in that cycle, and you're going to be continue to repeat that in your head. It's going to keep holding you back. So, got to build that awareness. Step number 1. I think some of the best ways to do that is therapy, meditation, journaling, tools like that. Talking to someone like a therapist can be super helpful because they can highlight these thought patterns that you may not see on your own and help you to rewrite them. For me personally, the most impactful tools have been meditation and in particular journaling. These are both topics we can dive into more deeply on future episodes. I think it'd be great to break those down. But journaling has been the number one most transformative tool for me by far. It just allows me to get everything out of my head and onto paper, and I can articulate what's going on, call myself out on the negative self-talk, and come up with a game plan to rewrite those narratives. It kind of just allows me to make it more black and white and, lay out the facts. So whether it's meditation, journaling, therapy, something else that works for you, like step 1 is building that self-awareness. Then, once you have that self-awareness, you can start catching those thoughts as they come up. That's it. Just start catching it, stopping it in its tracks. Get really good at recognizing that, stopping it, and repeat that over and over. And this may take weeks, months to get into a flow, and that's okay. It's just a process. And then once you get good at that, you can go to the next level. So once you build the awareness, you catch it, you stop it, and then you can start replacing it with something else. And I think this is where people sometimes get confused. You don't need to start telling yourself positive affirmations that you don't actually believe. For some people, positive affirmations work. That's great. I did use positive affirmations myself, and they helped me to some extent. But if you don't believe the affirmation, what's the point? Like, don't say, don't bullshit yourself if you're not going to believe it. So if you're one of those people, when you rewrite it, you need to find the truth in what you're telling yourself. So for example, if my thought is I'm not good enough, I'm not going to replace it with I am good enough, because let's be honest, I don't believe that. Like, that's bullshit. So instead, I'm going to look for the truth that I do believe. Maybe that's, let's say, like, I have the tools and knowledge to figure this out. Or I'll look back at all the things that I've overcome in the past and remind myself, I've overcome XYZ, so I'm more than qualified to overcome this hurdle. So it's just about finding the truth that resonates and helps you to move towards your goal there. And if you keep repeating this process, catching the thought, stopping it, rewriting it with something that's true over and over, it's going to become automatic. And that's how I've gotten to the point where I am now, where I immediately catch that and I can pull where it's coming from and I can immediately switch and rewrite it. And over time, this becomes the way you believe, the way you function, and the way you show up in your day to day life.
Yeah, for me, prayer is my first step. I go to God with it and say, is this really the narrative that you're creating? Did God really create someone that's going to be a loser type of thing or fail?
Mm-hmm.
And so I go to Him with it, and He'll provide me that peace. Not that there aren't challenges, and there's a lot of times where I go to God, I'm like, I'm not quite sure why this happened. Please explain this to me. So I think going along with that, practicing that self compassion, treating yourself with that same kindness that you should or you would show a friend. And this is just only going to boost your emotional resilience and help you to embrace who you really are. So, you enter that journey with self-care in mind rather than self-hate, building discipline, treating it as a skill that can lead to higher success rates, and then maintain balance in any of your pursuits.
So good. Yeah. This is, again, is the topic that I'm very passionate about. I love diving into like this inner work, the mindset stuff, the mental health stuff. But to recap, to build bulletproof self belief, self confidence, step one is getting clear on your goal and, more importantly, your why on a very deep level. Step two is setting small, very achievable, manageable goals. Step three, and I'd say adding on to step two, is being consistent with those.
Yeah.
Step three is tracking your progress in meaningful ways and making sure you're focusing on the right metrics. Step four is surrounding yourself with the right people. And step five is going to be practicing that positive self talk loop. So, yeah, that's the game plan.
That's it.
Basically, if you guys want to connect with us, you can find us on socials. I'll put those in the show notes. And the best place to connect is actually going to be in our private community. Like Lawrence mentioned, we run all kinds of challenges, giveaways, calls, new content every day, and it's completely free to join. If you're looking for that community, if you're looking for like-minded people, that's exactly why we built this. So I'll put that link in the notes as well. And we'll see y'all next week.